As Iris said, though, there is no official confirmation for the moment from the Israeli government or the Israeli army that Yahya Sinwar has been killed in a strike. Covering this with me as well, Douglas Herbert, our foreign affairs commentator. And look, Doug, if this is confirmed, it's a big moment, isn't it, in the war in Gaza? Tell us who Sinwar is and why it's such a big moment.
Well, first of all, it would be a big moment because if Yahya Sinwar was as influential and powerful within the Hamas movement as its new leader, its new political leader since the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran last August. He was appointed following that assassination. If he is as powerful as everyone says he was, and if he was still able to essentially give orders and call the shots, including in ceasefire negotiations that he was far physically separated from deep under Gaza, maybe 9 or 10 stories deep underneath Gaza, if he's that powerful, it's very significant. This was a man, he's described by people who had come into contact with him as anything but ordinary. He had a voracious curiosity and zest to sort of know thine enemy. And what that meant is during his many years in prison, he spent around 20 years in Israeli prisons beginning in the late 90s. And during that time, he is said to have learned, taken online courses. He mastered Hebrew. He read all sorts of biographies. He read about in Hebrew. He read about the Israeli intelligence services. He even translated these texts into Arabic, so his cellmates in these Israeli prisons, his Arabic-speaking cellmates, would be able to learn more about the tactics of Israeli intelligence agencies. So this is a man who his signature of his personality has been a real determination to be not just a figurehead, but a very active figurehead of the resistance to Israel and the Israeli occupation, as he has described it throughout. So significant. Because, like I said, he still was calling many of the shots. And during even the ceasefire negotiations, which had been ongoing, now they're stalled, of course. But, in recent months, those ceasefire negotiations, whether in Egypt, in Doha, back and forth, everyone always had to wait. Reportedly from a sign-off from Yahya Sinwar, even though, like I said, he was deep underground in hiding, under the ground in Gaza, wasn't physically present, and communications were extremely difficult in a devastated Gaza. Getting the messages took a while. Getting them back to the negotiators in Doha, Egypt, took a while, but they still had to wait, and that sometimes took a day, 2, 3 days. So it gives a sense of just how important he was a figure, a leader within Hamas, more than just the symbolism of being a leader. And why right now, this could change the dynamic in many ways.
Well, let's talk a bit about then the dynamic, because as you say, the ceasefire talks have stalled for some time. We are still, let's remember, waiting for official confirmation that Sinwar has been killed. But if indeed it is confirmed, what kind of impact do you think it's going to have then on the war? Right.
Well, first of all, I preface this by saying everything's speculation, right? You're not in the mind of Yahya Sinwar. What we do know is that this was a man who believed that it was in his interest to make sure that this war was dragged out as long as possible in order to dent or even to go further and to undermine Israel's reputation in the world community. For the longer this war went on, the worse the devastation in Gaza. His calculation, you could call it cynical, if you will, was that the world would, turn against Israel, would give Israel more a bad name than Hamas in Gaza. So it was not, according to reports and accounts from those who knew him, in his interest. He didn't really want to see this war end, and we had been hearing in recent months with these negotiations, neither Israeli negotiators nor Hamas were inclined to accept the terms of ceasefires that were delivered time and again. They kept sort of declining or hemming and hawing and objecting to them. So with him out of the picture, if indeed it is definitively confirmed that he has been killed, he is no longer the political leader of Hamas calling the shots. Could it make those those elusive ceasefire negotiations easier? Yes, but then again, so many other factors, Nadia, at this point, enter into the equation. Given the fact that everything's been escalating on so many multiple fronts, it's gone beyond just a story of Yahya Sinwar at this point. So it could have helped if it was just limited, perhaps, to the theater of Gaza, to perhaps open a pathway to a ceasefire. It could perhaps give Benjamin Netanyahu some cover cover with his far-right ultra-nationalist cabinet and government members in saying we knocked out the top guy in Hamas, maybe give him a little political cover to try to seek some pathway to ending the war. But that's more unlikely than not, like I said, given the fact there's been a conflict that's been escalating on so many different fronts at once. It's a bigger story now than simply the Hamas leader, simply Yahya Sinwar.
And just a final thought from you then. This is, of course, linked to what happens next in the war, but what impact this might have on the hostages who remain in Gaza?
Well, interestingly, what the initial reports from the IDF, as it tweeted, were that there were no, as far as they had seen, there had been no hostages in the immediate vicinity of where this strike happened, where these 3 Hamas militants were reportedly killed by the IDF. So no hostages in the vicinity. But like I said, he was very much opposed to ceasefire deals, and he also knew the value of having hostages, keeping hostages in order to achieve, as he saw him, Hamas's objectives and goals. He was not a man who was easily going to concede more hostages. Could this potentially make it easier to release hostages? Yes, you could say it could. But like I said, I'll give the same answer I gave just before. There are so many other variables right now in this war complicating the hostage equation, not least of which is the reality also of Benjamin Netanyahu, the pressures surrounding him, the pressures with his government, the dynamics of his government that come into play that just removing Yahya Sinwar out of the picture, I sense would not be the magical elixir that's needed to secure the release of the remaining hostages.
Douglas Herbert, thank you very much indeed for your analysis on this breaking news we're watching today out of Gaza and out of Israel, that the Israeli army is checking, we're told, checking the DNA of an individual who was killed in a strike in Gaza to check if that is indeed the head of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar.